And Vic Mensa, if you ever see this, big up yourself. This is probably the least that I'm ever gonna talk. Just watch this TED Talk. This happens to be the best TEDx talk I've ever seen. Granted, I've only seen probably about 10, but if you haven't seen this, run the numbers up because the views are very, very low compared to like, normally TEDx talks are like hundreds of thousands or millions, and Vic Mensa is crazy popular. So I don't know why either his fan base or why the African diaspora isn't watching this TED Talk, but that's what I'm here for, y'all. So just watch this clip. The link is in the description. Watch it, but then this is what I need you to do. Come back here and comment to me on all the different parts that you love so we can talk. Y'all. But stay to the end because I want to tell you the one part that I'm just like, ah!
Africa existed in the imagination of my childhood friends primarily within a framework of caricatures, most famous of which was by far African Booty Scratcher, with Spear Chucker coming in a close second. Although these caricatures are very one-dimensional, they are, however, not so much of a departure from what Black Americans are shown of Africa. Take, for example, the UNICEF commercials. Emaciated African children in mud huts that you can save for $1. Although well-intentioned, the narrative is one of scarcity, not of Africa as the most resource-rich continent on the planet. I've often heard Africans view African Americans in just that stereotypical ways, as lazy, criminal, and violent. The disjointing of the African diaspora has been the most effective tool of white supremacy in the continued disenfranchisement of peoples of African descent. By the year 2050, a quarter of the world's population will be African. African Americans, having come from a collective wealth of absolute zero during chattel slavery, have in a period of under 200 years amassed a spending power of over $1 trillion. Reuniting the broken bond of the African and the Black American can combine strength in numbers with strength in dollars and a level of cultural influence unprecedented in world history, with which we can begin to address the devastating wounds of colonization. But it will require strategy. Today, I'll be discussing 3. First of which, identification of a common enemy and a naming of our shared oppressions. Secondly, transcending neocolonialism. And third, fostering cultural understanding through the use of art, technology, and education.
And Vic Mensa, if you ever see this, big up yourself. This clip right here is one of my favorites.
In 1962, when addressing a delegation of African freedom fighters, Kwame Nkrumah said, and I paraphrase, "This meeting gives us the opportunity to assess our strengths as well as those of our enemy." Who is the enemy? The enemy is imperialism, with its weapons, colonialism, and neocolonialism. Let's define imperialism. Imperialism is the practice of a nation imposing its rule or authority over another nation, most often through the use of brute military force. It is no secret that we as Black people, from Ghana to South Africa to Nigeria to Haiti to Jamaica, from Louisiana to Botswana, have been the victims of a ruthless imperialism at the hands of the British, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Portuguese, pretty much all white people, and in a more distant past, the Arab world as well. It is the same British Empire that colonized the land of my father that is responsible for the proliferation of African slaves across the Americas and the Caribbean. Same enemy. It's the same counterintelligence arm of America that's responsible for destabilizing the Black community with crack cocaine, that's responsible for destabilizing governments across Africa by meddling in their politics. Same enemy. Let's backtrack for a second. In 1957, Kwame Nkrumah led Ghana to independence, becoming the first nation in sub-Saharan Africa to achieve this feat. He subsequently became the nation's first president. Kwame Nkrumah was an unabashed enemy of imperialism. He was a Pan-Africanist with ties to other leaders such as Mugabe and Lumumba, and amassed a fortune in his time in power, with which Ghana was able to fund liberation movements for African nations across the continent. This was a significant threat to America. And in 1966, the CIA was involved in a coup that deposed Kwame Nkrumah, setting Ghana and the continent at large back considerably. Let's fast forward a little bit. In 1979, in another military power grab, this time in South America, the CIA collaborated with a Nicaraguan rebel group called the Contras to overthrow the government. How did they fund it? They brought Nicaraguan cocaine into the United States at the dawn of the crack epidemic, effectively opening the doors for the sliding of the prison cells that would begin the age of mass incarceration. And today, there are more African people in bondage in a prison cell than were ever on a plantation. Same enemy. Now, private prisons in America are big business. One of the largest companies is called Geo Group. That same Geo Group owns carceral facilities in South Africa, where the Dutch have bastardized the African people. Now, if we go to West Africa, Dutch-owned Shell Gas Company is one of the primary drillers of Nigerian oil. Same enemy. When you begin to peel back the layers, a clear imperialist shadow is cast from the cells of Sing Sing to Johannesburg to the oil fields in Nigeria. If we can identify our common enemy, at that point, we can begin to collectivize our power. But without strategy, power is useless. Any effective strategy has to include transcending neocolonialism.
But like, I honestly couldn't pick just one. The whole thing from beginning to end. Mwah. How do you say fantastic in Swahili? Or in Issakosa? Or in Zulu? Somebody help me. Write in the comments, please. Later, y'all.